Tonight we're going to talk about how to improve the back or the rain back. So thanks for joining us for this. There we go. Okay, so our agenda is to talk about the requirements of the back and about the halt, which is required in most of them. Okay, so tonight we'll talk about the agenda, which shows requirements. We'll talk about the halt, the aids and rider position, the cross training, some troubleshooting, and the final tips and takeaways. And we also have a special guest, Judge Janice Mumford will be joining us also to talk more about this with us. So thank you for that. The requirements of the back, and this is per the rule book, is that the back is a rearward diagonal movement with a 2-beat rhythm, but without a moment of suspension. Each diagonal pair of legs is raised and returned to the ground alternately, with the forelegs aligned on the same track as the hind legs. What they're getting at there is that it looks like a diagonal step backwards, but it's more in a walk pace rather than jog, so there's no moment of suspension. And when they talk about the forelegs being aligned on the same track as the hind legs, that from the front it looks like a railroad track, that the hind feet are not wider or the front feet are not narrower, that the legs go back, the left leg and front leg together in one line, and so on. So during the exercise, the horse should remain in connection or on the bit in the same frame that it came into the halt in, and it should maintain its desire to move forward at the slightest indication of the rider. People ask me about this all the time about, okay, exactly what frame should my horse be in while it's backing? And when your horse halts, if you're at second level, your horse's frame or outline or connection is going to maybe look different from a level 5 horse. But what they're getting at is the appropriate balance for the level that you're in is the frame that you should be at as you continue through the back. The halt needs to be square to begin with, and the straighter and the more square it is, the more accurate it and easily performed it will be. Accuracy is also part of your score. So the halt is part of the score, and they're looking for a square halt, the horse round to the bridle and parallel to uh, whatever fence that you're parallel to. And then the accuracy at the letter, people are always saying to me, well, exactly where? You know, the absolute best position is the horse's forelegs at the letter, and then the horse being straight. You know, one of the things we talk about is the horse also needs a signal to stand, and we've been talking about that a lot this year, that we're allowed to use verbal cues, and as you step up into the halt, you can use all of your verbal cues to tell the horse, whoa, stand. You can put your hand down on the neck to keep them immobile, because that moment of immobility must be established before the reinback begins. And there is a minimum of a 0.5 deduction if there is no immobility in the halt, if the horse steps into what should be the halt but is never immobile and begins backing. The minimum deduction is a 0.5 off, and it can be more. Okay, well, I love this horse's face. Who's counting? Well, everyone's counting, and the steps are counted. And in many of the movements, they tell us exactly how many steps that they want us to take back. If you get lucky, you're in a movement that just says back from here to here, but mostly it'll say 3 steps back, 5 steps back, 10 steps back. Every movement of the foreleg is considered to be a step, and the steps are counted from the foreleg. So if you're halted and you're immobile, the very first time your horse shifts a foreleg back, that's a 1. Whether they shift it back this far or they take a big step is irrelevant. The judge is counting that as a step. So you need to be prepared to be counting the minute the horse's foreleg begins going back. Every foreleg movement is counted. After completing the required numbers of steps backwards, the horse should show a square stop or move forward in the required gait immediately. In our rule book, it says if you are asked for a halt and a reinback in the box, and then it says move forward um, in working walk. Um, in Western, we're allowed to halt the horse before we move forward. However, there are some tests that are written, and there's also a movement we're going to talk about later tonight called the swing, where the horse is moving backwards and is expected to immediately step forward into the next gait. That's a skill that you want to learn and you want to teach the horse. And if you can teach the horse to back diagonally and then immediately step forward with the same leg, that's one of the points that judges are looking for, this ability for you to ask the horse to be going backwards and then be going forwards, just like shifting the car without that halt. And it is a positive thing if you're able to do it well. So you do have an option. You can halt and settle your horse and then go forward. Or if you're backing and you're capable of stepping the horse forward into, let's say, the jog or whatever movement or gait they're asking for, that's also a very good skill that judges are learning and willing to give you a higher score for if you're able to do it. So you have to read your test carefully to understand what they're asking you for. Next, please. Just love that picture of that horse. Okay, here's a horse that is going to show us very clear steps backwards. Go ahead and push the button for us, Dana. And what this horse shows is super joint articulation. What you're going to see is this horse takes big steps high off the ground backwards. Let's have that again if you wouldn't mind, Dana. And it moved directly forward from the back in a very fluid motion. So it stays on the bit, and you don't really see much. You just see very quiet aids. This is, of course, our friend Joanne Williams. She's an awesome competitor and judge herself. Very articulated steps way off the ground, which is great. Let's look at the next one, please. Okay, so now we're going to see a horse that moves a little bit differently. Go ahead with this one. Very square halt, horses round to the bridle. Whoops. And let's see that maybe again for us. So clear steps backwards, very diagonal, horse staying on the bit, and light aids to move forward. And that's what we're looking for throughout. So the requirements of the back is that it's again, we're going to reiterate, a rearward diagonal movement with a 2-beat rhythm, but without a moment of suspension. Each diagonal pair of legs is raised and returned to the ground alternately, with the forelegs aligned on the same tracks as the hind legs. And during the entire exercise, the horse should remain on the bit or in connection, maintaining its desire to move forward at the slightest indication of the rider. What we can see here in this picture right here is that I have just barely put my leg back and lifted my seat lightly. Horse is round to the bridle, and she has taken the first diagonal pair step back, which was left fore and right hind. And she's in the process of beginning to move the next diagonal pair of legs in this photograph. We're looking for those diagonals to be clear and for the steps to step together and to clear the ground. So serious faults in the back are that the horse anticipates the movement. So some horses come up to the halt, and then they're trying to back before the rider gets them settled. Let's say they lose immobility or there is no immobility, and they're anticipating the movement itself. Resistance or evasion of the contact of the bit, either by raising the neck or going behind the bit, which is referred to as curling, dropping the pole or the neck below the withers. So we're talking about the frame that the horse is in. Is the horse round to the bridle, in connection, or on the bit? And it's supposed to stay in the same frame while it backs as it was when it halted, or if it jogged up or it walked up or it loped up to the halt, then that frame that it stops, that it was on the bit in, that's the frame in that level that the horse is expected to back. So it shouldn't be dropping its poll below the withers. It should not curl behind the bridle, which is face behind the vertical. It shouldn't go above the bit. It shouldn't open its mouth, fling its head around. And resistance or evasion, meaning, there are horses that just plain stop and they won't go, or they don't want to, or they brace against the bridle. So all of those things are problems. A horse going above the bit or curling, almost all of the horses that have a contact problem with the bit, you will also see that usually they have a problem with the steps also, that they go wide behind, they go crooked, they drag their feet, or they're inactive, resisting not wanting to take the steps. So you'll almost never see only an evasion contact problem. That will be coupled usually with step problems. So deviations of the hindquarters from the straight line, meaning it's crooked. Spreading or inactive hind legs, the horse going wide behind. You usually see that also with dragging, which is dragging the feet and or losing clear diagonal steps. So any problems with the steps, dragging the feet, and sometimes you see a horse that drags its legs backwards. It's like it's ooh, it is backing up and it's leaning backwards and its feet are dragging along the ground. These are strong faults and do receive poor scores, which is tough for us. And horses are often, the back is often something that is not practiced a lot, and it's not always practiced enough, and not enough cross training. And so what happens is horses learn bad habits when they learn the back, and they worry about the back, and when you ask them to back, they have strong concerns because they have a lack of confidence. So we're going to talk about the training that we can do later on tonight to help them with being more correct in all of the steps. So the aids for the back are that you begin with a square balanced halt that is on the connection or on the bit, with the pole correctly above the withers, and we talked about the frame or the balance of the horse should be appropriate to the level of the test. So level 2, level 4, level 5, whatever level you're in, the frame and the balance appropriate for that level. The reins should be low and together, and we always talk about having our arms triangulated and your forearms in front of the swell and around the horn, keeping your hands low and together. The rider's lower leg should be in alignment, and the lower legs need to be on the sweet spot to begin with. So riders that are in chair seat to begin with sometimes have difficulty getting their legs in the right position for backing. So to begin with, you want to be sure that your normal leg alignment is correctly in order. Then, when you want to begin, you put your both legs back. And many riders, it was hard to see for me, my legs go quite far back on that particular horse, but they don't actually even touch her anymore because she's so well trained that this is the only movement when both legs go back that far. She knows it's the back, and I don't even have to push. I just put them back, and they're just about like, you could put two papers, maybe two widths of paper between my leg and her. I'm not actually pushing against her. Most people train their horse that they put the lower leg back, that both lower legs have to be exactly even, because if one is ahead of the other, if one's further back than the other, then the horse will back in a curve. It will back away from the leg that's further back. You have to be sure that both legs, when they go back, if you want a straight back, are absolutely parallel to each other on the horse, because people that have to back curves, which some of us do for obstacle work, When you back a horse, you put both legs back, but one leg's a little further ahead than the other, and the leg that's back causes the horse to back away from it. And this is how you get a horse to back around a curve. So you have to be sure that both legs are even, that they're back the even amount, and that the pressure, if one leg has more pressure than the other, when you gently squeeze, release, squeeze, release, squeeze, release, if one has more pressure than the other, the horse will also back sideways away from that. So even pressure, evenly back, evenly placed. Now, this is very important, and a lot of people don't know this, and it's not always taught well. But if you sit back and lean back on the back of a saddle while you're trying to back a horse, it is what causes dragging. And frequently, the back drops and the thoracic drops. So traditional aids for backing is that you just very slightly incline your upper body forward, and we're talking the tiniest little bit. You soften or you lift the back of the seat, that you are not leaning back or sitting back on your buttocks. You have a tiny incline forward with your body, which is minimal. I actually do it more than most equitation judges would like. My pictures, and we're going to show you this again, I actually sit a little more forward in the back than if I was in an equitation class. I would be very careful with that. I'm a little more forward than a lot of judges like to see, but that particular mare that I was riding really needs me to get up off her back or her feet drag. So both lower legs go back, and they must be evenly placed back. And then very small presses of your lower leg, which is actually your ankle area, they have to be evenly placed and even pressure. After the horses are trained, you often don't even touch the horse with the leg. When both legs go that far back and they feel the leg go back, it's the only exercise that both legs go completely way, way back. The horse knows it's going to back, and you don't even have to touch him. You just put the legs back, and I'm not squeezing at all, and she starts backwards. When you begin, you want to tell them verbally, back, back, back. And for each step that you want, your legs go step, 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 a tiny little squeeze. And if the leg and if the verbal command is not enough, then you've just barely squeezed the bit, and the hand and the leg coordinates it, and these tiny little touches on the bit, because what you're trying to do is teach the horse it's going to only step back every step that you tell it, and this is how you can control whether it's 4 steps or 10 steps back. You're giving it a cue for every single step. So you're going back, 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 and you're counting 1, 2, 3, 4. And when you cease that, the horse either stops for the halt, or you sit correctly upright, and your leg goes slightly forward and the horse goes forward. So these tiny, tiny little touches and release for each step, and the hand pressure asking the horse to back. Keep in mind that your thumbs will be slightly tilted forward so that the horse maintains connection on the bit. So this is your hand position for the neck lowering half halt, but you haven't hand much, but you keep your thumb forward. You must keep in mind that it's very important that your horse not drop its thoracic and not drop its withers while it's backing. Neither do you want it to invert, which is to go way above the bit and put its back down. Those two things are always marked to 4. And so you're looking to keep the horse in some semblance of its frame while it's backing. If your horse doesn't back well, and if you're working on backing, keeping it on the bit while you begin to back with weight on it can be difficult, and it is a challenge. Remember that it's more important to get the steps correctly, and that you work on the connection after you get the steps correctly, because rhythm is always more important than connection. So use verbal aids while you're coordinating your hand, saying back, 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 or whatever signal you're using, or count aloud. If you keep this up and if you work your horses in hand a lot, you can back a horse in hand without ever touching the lead line. You just back, back, and the horse keeps taking steps back. So in cross training in hand can be very helpful to you. To proceed ahead, remember that your lower leg is going to go gently a little tiny bit forward, and then it's going to wrap around the horse and go on, and that your upper body is just going to come out of that 2-degree incline, and you're going to sit up straight through from your abdomen to your head, and then the horse will go forward. And then you use your neck down lowering half halt, and you put your leg on for whichever gait that you need, whether it's the walk, the jog, or the lope, and you proceed in that gait. So the aids are very clear, and you have to practice them. So always we're talking about the rider's position, and this is one of the few times that the horse is badly, really strongly affected by crooked riders. So you're desperately trying to be absolutely centered on the horse, your knees at the same length, your feet at the same position, that you're equal left to right, that no leg is more forward or more back. So your fingers closed on the reins, and the reins well up in the webbing of the fingers. And my arms are triangulated here because you know that because you can't see my hands and her head's in the way. This is good. This would be a great backing position for this horse because her poll is clearly above her withers. You can't see the horn. That's excellent. Your armpits are open ever so slightly. Your elbows are bent. Your clavicles, which is up here, around your the top of your chest, are open. You want to be up. Your chin is in neutral. You don't want it tucked down. If you tuck your head down or you look down, the horse will drop its neck and drag its front feet. You also don't want to be looking up because that tips weight onto the back of your saddle, which presses the back down, and they drag the feet. So you're hoping to be looking straight ahead with your chin in neutral. Your legs have to be evenly back and evenly positioned and used in equal pressure. Okay, so here's a side angle to see just how triangulated your arms can be, and here's how it looks for another rider. She has a little different position, and her horse is in a little bit different frame, but she has her hands together, low and triangulated, and around and in front of the horn and on top of the saddle pad. And this is necessary to get a good backup. For people that have their hands up here above the horn and or wide, the higher your hand goes, the more the horse's head drops and its neck drops below the withers. That puts the horse on the forehand and dragging occurs. It is a huge deduction in Western dressage when the poll and neck go below the withers in the reinback. So this is a picture of the back to the lope, which is in one of the tests. I think it's one of the 4th level tests, or it used to be, but go ahead and show this, Dana. So coming into the lope to a square halt, and that's marked first, so nice and square, horse is on the bit, and begins the diagonal backing. And she took diagonal steps, stayed on the bit, and then lopes off in the correct lead. And at the upper levels, there is a lot of lope up to a halt and back 8 or 10 steps. Go ahead and show it again if you'd like. Nice square halt though, that's what we're looking for. She was very straight, steps are diagonal. One of the things they're looking for is, as we spoke about, sometimes when a horse starts back, the first step or two will be only a very short step, and then they get more normal in length. And you're trying to teach your horse under saddle, and one of the things you're teaching yourself is that you're trying to get all the steps the same length. But even if the horse should take 2 tiny little short steps and then 3 more big ones, that's 5 steps. I actually had a trainer the other day, came and said, hey, would you take a look at my test and blah, blah. And, gee, I didn't get the mark on the rein-back that I thought I would get. And I'm like, well, you took too many steps. It said 4 steps. You took 7 or 6. And they said to me, well, I said, we were arguing, and finally I said, well, you go ahead and count. And the trainer that rode the horse, she didn't count the two tiny little steps. The horse took two tiny little steps with its front feet, and then it really began to take nice steps. She only counted the nice steps. I said, whether they're nice or not, when those front feet start, that's it. Those count. That's when the judge started counting. And so they wrote down that you did too many steps, and they took some points off. Misunderstanding of how it would be evaluated, that's all. So that's kind of tough. So cross training can be really important in backing, and a lot of horses have anxiety about backing, especially because backing is often used in some areas as a strong, severe discipline, and some trainers in some divisions that are related to Western use it as a reprimand, under saddle and in hand, and so horses become very anxiety-ridden, or perhaps develop bad habits related to the backing. So some of the problem, and then of course it goes without saying that a lot of trailers require horses to back off trailers that are down ramps or step down trailers that horses are asked to back off. So backing, and then thinking about the fact that the horse actually can't see directly behind it, it's not one of its most favorite things to do. A horse really has to trust you to back well and be absolutely straight. They would really, really like to turn their heads because their vision is on the side, not on the front like ours is. And so if they turn their head, then they can see directly behind them. And when we require them to back with their head absolutely dead on straight, they do have a blind spot right directly behind their hind legs, and that's right where they're stepping. So it requires a lot of trust, and it's very important to talk about that. And actually, that's kind of an elephant in the room for us to discuss as trainers. So working in hand to begin with, you need always a square halt, and you can get that done a lot in hand. You can have a square up signal that's verbal for a horse, and after you've done a ton of work in hand getting horses to square up, then with weight on them, it's a lot easier to get this. And most people have a signal for a horse, a verbal signal, and they use it. Starting with that, then go on to thinking about in hand some of the things that you want to do when you ask for the back is you can ask horses to make the steps longer and shorter. You can begin to control the head height of where the horse is, and you definitely don't want it below the withers. The more frequently you can practice with short opportunities, very short work sessions, and where the horse is rewarded often, use a lot of treats, can make all the difference in the world. Now, horses that have problems where you see that they don't joint articulate, they possibly don't pick their feet up, then working a horse in hand over poles and cavaletti poles will help. And you can ask a horse to step forward so that it's maybe just its front feet over the pole and ask it to back up. And then you can ask it to walk all the way in front of the pole, and now it has to put its hind legs and its front feet back over the poles. You're going to have some anxiety with this. Be very patient with the horses. It's very important that they learn to negotiate these without having stress. And you'll find that it's a therapy for horses. The more that you step them over the poles and back them over the poles, the better their joint articulation will be. And amazingly enough, when you go to lead the horse forward over the pole, you'll actually see that they take better steps forward. So the whole idea of working the horses over the poles is great. We usually only do that primarily in hand to start with. You can do it under saddle, but we don't recommend it until after you've really gotten a horse backing well, because adding the pole in under saddle, if they have a lot of saddle anxiety, don't do that in the beginning. Do that after the horse is more seasoned. Now, backing up a very small slope can really help if you have a horse that doesn't have super diagonal steps. It is tricky. The idea of backing horses over the cavaletti poles, they're going to step on the poles. So a lot of times we don't use round poles. We use landscaping poles that are flat on two sides so that they don't roll to get over anxiety with the poles. Backing up small slopes can also improve diagonal steps. However, it depends on what it is that your horse doesn't do well. For example, horses that clear the ground, but the steps aren't diagonal, the slopes are better for them because it makes them more diagonal. But as they back up a slope, they're likely to drag. A horse that doesn't drag at all will drag a little bit uphill because they're just not used to doing it. So you also have to do normal backing in flat areas, and you're only using these for occasional extra training, not primary training. They're good cross-training exercises. When you get some good quality of steps, you want to stop. So, you may be working on a level where they're asking for 4 steps, but you have a horse that really resists. If you can only get 2 good steps today, get the 2 good steps and stop and reward the horse and let it go do something else. Getting good quality steps, even if it's fewer steps than you want, is the most important thing today. And that's the important part. Then once you get good quality steps, you increase the number of steps. For example, you might have a test that requires you to back 6 steps, but you can only get 4 good ones right now. I keep telling people, do 4 steps, do 5 steps, go forward, do 3 steps, do 4 steps. It's more about the quality. Keep getting good quality, and then only occasionally ask for the more steps and the more steps, because if they force the extra steps, what happens is you start out with good quality, it gets worse at the end, and you just train the horse anyway for the poor steps. So you want to get good quality steps, reward that frequently, do it more often, and you'll eventually see that you will be able to ease up to the number of steps that you need. This requires a lot of patience. Backing is something that horses really have associated a lot of anxiety, a lot of miscommunication. People have gotten after them a lot about it. It has often been violent for horses, and sometimes it has been used as a discipline. And so they have a lot of concerns about this. Using a voice signal is very important, and when you're cross-training, if you don't have to pull on the head, if you don't have to pull on the halter or pull on the bridle, if you don't have to, that's a great thing. You want to work on a voice signal, back, back, back. I was very excited the other day that for a second I put the rope down on the ground in the barn aisle for Lilith, and she was ground tying. And, I decided that I wanted to step in front of her with some stuff, and she was kind of in my way. And I thought, well, I have worked and worked on the signal. And I said, back, back, back. And she stepped back 3 steps. And she stood there. And I thought, yay, it worked. And it will work. So keep doing it. It will work. The last, very, very last resort that you ever use, and we don't recommend this, but it occasionally has to happen, and it's 1 in 50 horses that you have to do this to, is to take and tap the front foreleg below the knee, just on the cannon bone, with a tiny little, just a little tiny bat, just lightly, just a tap, to lift the legs, to get them to step backwards, for horses that have so much anxiety and won't bend their knees and are having difficulty with this. It is true that this will work. It's not a reprimand, it's a tap cue, like this leg now, and it literally is just almost like just touching them with a little bat or a whip. But we're not talking about hitting them or slashing them. It's a little tiny tap. Once in a great while, you have a horse that just has been frozen in place so many times, and it's been disciplined so many times, that as it backs up, it backs backwards over its front legs and it leaves its front legs behind, dragging them. And this can just once or twice of that, and then backing them over the cavaletti generally takes care of this. But it does work, and it can be used successfully if you're very careful with it. It could be a positive experience. You don't want to use it very much, and the taps literally are just a touch. So here, go ahead and show this, Dana. This is some in-hand work over a pole, which we're going to look at some cross-training here so you can get an idea. And we did not edit this so that you can see that at some points when she's doing this, you know, there's going to be some backing onto the pole and stepping on the pole. And yep, she steps on the pole. You can see that. And back and forth. So what you're looking is to try to keep her straight. And when you're asking for the back, I'm saying to her back, back. But you really don't even see me pull on the rope. But to begin with, you might have to go back, back, back with your hand. And back and forth, and lots of praising. Cookies are great, lots of pats to tell them that, hey, this is a good job. So you want to walk them right along up over to and over the pole. And sometimes you stop with just the front feet over, and sometimes, and we usually start there, but this is the more advanced part where I put her all the way over. And having them back their hind feet over is difficult, but what it does is teach them to really pick up their hind legs and joint articulate behind, and it makes more correct diagonal backing for you. So here is after you're sure that it's all going well, and of course Lilith is schooled to do this, so I did want to show you that once you have a horse that does back under saddle, and there's no problem particularly with that, but you are not getting the steps that you need, here is backing over the pole under saddle. So we can look at that here. So coming up to it, you know, nice and round, and stopped over the pole. And nice diagonal steps. You can see that I was light in my seat and then jogged forward and walked off. I think this goes on a little bit. I don't remember. I think it goes a little further. Okay, and then here we are again. So you can see the little bit light seat, legs back, and the diagonal steps backwards. She does a good job keeping her pulled the highest point, her mouth closed, the steps diagonal, and they appear to be very similar in length, which is one of the things that in judging we're looking for. So cross-training can be incredibly helpful for horses that are having difficulty. And doing a lot of backing without the saddle, without weight, helps the horse get started and confident. There is a movement in Western dressage called the swing, and it is what they refer to as a back series, which is a combination of 2 or more back with walk forward steps in between. And I wanted to discuss it because although we're only talking about backing here, the swing is a movement. You do need to know about it. We need to educate you now. It is in the upper levels, but still you need to know about it so that you understand what it is. You've heard about it before you get there. We've at least talked about it, and you understand what's going to be asked in the swing. So the way that it's executed is that they will say halt, let's say halt at A, and it'll say 4 steps back, 4 steps forward, 6 steps back, walk forward, or trot forward, or canter forward, whatever it is they want you to do. So in a back swing, in the swing, there are no halts because the entire point of the exercise is will that horse go from going backwards to going forwards immediately with no halts? And that's why we were talking earlier about if they ask you for a halt and a rein back, some people will halt and steady their horse, but some people are already training for the swing and they will immediately walk their horse out of the rein back, out of the back steps, And they're hoping that the judge is going to see that they did that and that they had the skill to do it, which is hard. And the judge goes, woo, 0.5 up, because they selected the harder, the more difficult way to perform this. You're allowed to perform the halt. If it's just a halt with a rein back, you can halt before you settle your horse afterwards. After you back, you can halt and then move forward. But if you're really wanting to impress the judges, if it says proceed in working walk or proceed in jog, they're looking to see, and literally when you step back, 1, 2, 3, 4, and if a horse is really good, the feet that he just put back, he comes forward, that you have that much control that you can bring that horse forward on the foot that you want. And some people can do that. Some horses are trained to do that. And it's amazing when you get that. So in the swing, we're looking for that skill. And so that's a skill you're coming to. You're going to learn this. So it's executed with fluent transitions and the required numbers of steps. And it's usually 4 back, 4 forward, 6 back, and then go forward. Other than the initial halt, it's performed with continuous movement, with the horse stepping fluently forward and the required gait after the back. So it's halt, nice and immobile on the bit, and then back, forward, back, and forward. A lot of times in level 4, you trot up to a halt, you go back, forward, back, and then you trot forward, you jog forward. So it's a really cool exercise, and you have that coming. So you need to at least be familiar with what this is, and when somebody's talking about the back, they may refer to the swing. And now you've at least been you've been educated about that so that you understand the skills that are coming as we develop this whole series of what is backing about and why is it important and why are we doing it. Okay, so we're going to look at a swing. Here's the back swing. She's going to halt at A and go back, back, and forward. And then she goes forward in the jog. So I believe this is collected jog to the halt. At A. So diagonal steps back and forward and back and forward on the bit. So, the cool thing is that you can really see that she maintained exactly the same connection level, like her balance was exactly the same, never came off the bit, super straight. You can run it again if you would like to, Dana, one more time. It is hard to see on the video because videos kind of jump around for everybody, but judges do count the steps and they go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 forward, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 back. In this video, you may not be able to see it on the Wi-Fi, but I know for sure she was supposed to take 6 back and I took 7. She was straight on the bit, active and fluid. The deduction for taking an extra step back is generally very small, maybe a 0.5. Sometimes judges don't always take it off, or you don't get a 9 or a 10, you get a 7.5 instead of maybe an 8 or something like that. Like, having the correct step number is important. However, the quality of the connection and the steps is always more important than the number of steps. So you need to be somewhere it's near. And those people that are super accurate, like the request in that particular test is 4 back, 4 forward, 6 back. She did do 4 back, 4 forward, but there was a half of a step, an extra step back. There was 7 count on the back, and then she trotted forward. And that was in a test. And the judge noted, the judge comment on that particular movement in that particular test was smoothly executed, 1 extra step, but they gave me an 8. And a lot of judges would give us 7.5. I know, because they would have taken that 0.5 deduction, and probably the judge that gave her the 8 um, was rewarding the fact of the connection or the balance and the quality of the steps. Because you will see horses that are super, super accurate, but maybe don't keep the connection so well, or perhaps the steps aren't as even, all the steps even in length, or the horse doesn't stay very well on the bit moving forward. So there's a lot of variables in this particular exercise, and that's why it's way up in the movements in the tests in level 4 and level 5. You don't have to do this one early on for a while. From the lower levels, they're just asking us to halt and back a few steps and then go forward. And that's all they're asking to begin with. But then this one's coming, so it's always very exciting. So troubleshooting, things to think about. So if a horse inverts, which is goes above the bit, does the giraffe thing, you need to review the aids. So a lot of times you didn't use soft enough aids. The aids weren't small enough. You could possibly consider using your voice. 90% of the time, horses that go above the bit when you're trying to back up, you need to do some cross training on the ground. And you have to be sure that you begin from a balance connected, i.e. on the bit halt. Like if they're above the bit before you start backing, there's no way they're not going to come on the bit. So you have to go back and back up far enough to address, well, I was off the bit in the jog before I got to the halt. Like I have to deal with getting on the bit, getting round to the connection, and then getting into a halt on the bit and go from there. Consider taking the half halt system course on our New Zenler platform to learn the half halts for keeping the neck down, keeping the horse round to the bridle, and keeping them rounder in connection and your correct arm position for that half halt system in order as you step into those halts that you have your arm in the right position to keep the horse more on the bit. Many horses that back crooked and or go wide behind. Going wide behind is usually tension and the horse doesn't want to take weight on its hocks. So it doesn't want to close its hocks and stop and step backwards. And that's something that you have to think about, like, is the horse comfortable backing up? And this, when the horse goes wide behind, I always say to people, that's definitely a cross-training problem. Like, get off the horse and back it in hand so you can look at what you're doing. And can your horse pick its feet up and back up? Horses that are hocky, that have arthritis in the hock, that they're having trouble with the stifles, they drag their legs a lot all the time in all gaits, not just necessarily in backing. But backing requires horses to flex the SI, the stifle, and the hock a lot. If you have arthritis in the hocks, you're going to see horses go wide behind. So your horse, you need to address its health. Crookedness is generally so many times that the rider is not even on the horse, that the legs were not even. They pushed more with one leg than the other. One leg was more ahead than the other, and so that caused the horse to veer off. And or when they halted, they weren't actually, like absolutely parallel to the fence, and so they weren't square and straight to start with. So crookedness is almost always about the rider. So you have to review where your legs are, where your seat, where your hands are for correct aids for straightness. And you have to be sure that you're not leaning, you're not looking down, you're not looking up, that you're looking dead on straight, and that you're even left to right in the stirrups, that you don't keep a lot more weight in one stirrup than the other. So left to right aids to be even and begin from a straight square halt. Horses that the poles drop and or the necks are below the withers, got to work on that. One of the easiest things is to get the weight off them. Keep in mind, and curling behind the vertical is another problem. Keep in mind that if you were trained to back a horse by leaning back, and there are a couple of divisions that really sit on the back of the saddle and were taught to actually lean back and kind of grind their seat bones into the horse, You can train a horse to do that, but biomechanically, ergonomically, what happens there is you're on the back of the saddle, you're a little bit further back on their back, and what happens is you drive the back of the saddle down into their back, and that forces their back to hollow. As their back hollows and they drop their thoracic, their neck will either go down or up, either way, but they're trying to get away from back pain. And what will happen is they drag their feet and they will lower their neck. It's a problem. So you want to be sure that you're not sitting too far back on the saddle, that you're careful with your legs. Review your hand position. The higher your hand goes, the lower a horse goes. So high, wide hands means that the horse is going to go deeper and deeper and deeper, and it is particularly a problem if you have any kind of a curb in. The higher your hand is, the more low the neck can go, mouth will drop, and curling. Too much hand frequently causes the horse to go behind the bridle or curl. So the hand has to be low, it needs to be triangulated, it needs to be in front of the swell. And the horse needs to be reschooled if it has a long time habit. If it did happen to go into a division where they back the horse purposefully with the poles and the neck way below the withers on purpose, and there are some divisions that teach that, you need to reschool that horse. See if you can do it with weight not on it first, do it in hand, and then work with it under saddle. You need to work it with the pole higher. So ask for less steps and get more correctly. Use poles if you need to and work on keeping the pole higher. Keep in mind that there's a real possibility that the horse may be overbitted. If it is curling and dropping its neck, do you have too much bit on it? Do you have a curb that you don't need? Can you go to a regular snaffle? Do you have a standard port curb, but could you go to a curb with a segmented mouthpiece? Things to think about. Always think about using the most benign bit that you can to get the best connection that you can. So you never want your horse overbitted. If the horse braces, it braces against the bit or it shows anxiety at the request, stop and cross train, get down. Use some new aids, try getting slightly off his back. Avoid using rein if you can, use voice aids. Lots and lots of lots of rewards with foods. My mare has a thing for carrots. She'll do anything for a carrot, maybe not so much for a cookie. But when I go out to do something tough, and if I'm going to do some cross training, I cut up some carrots and give her some little carrot slices, and she's like, wow, this is a great reward. And, do more, get less, give more rewards, lots of pattings, lots of voice, good boy, good girl, and look for the quality of the steps back. Do a lot of short backs frequently. Back the horse often. Back it in the stall, back it in the aisle, get to the gate at the pasture, back up a couple steps, go back, 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 and hopefully you can just move your hand or not even use it. Can you wave your hand and the horse will back? You're trying to get it to back to voice commands with its neck up and clear steps. Lots of rewards to avoid anxiety. And you want to explore every possibility of pain. If your horses do not respond to any of this above here, backing is one of the few things that it can cause a lot of discomfort. And they're not used to backing, and if they are in discomfort, it's one of the few things that they'll really refuse to do, and a horse that really refuses to do it, you really want to look at, is there any possibility here that there's some pain? Because it is hard on the hocks, the SI, the stifles, and the back. And front feet. If a horse has navicular, it will drag. It will put its shoulders down and it will drag backwards, and it'll put its neck and its head down because it's dragging its feet because it's thinking that it can get the weight off its feet. It's actually getting more on it, but it can really be a problem. Any kind of teeth or bitting issue is always head up, mouth open, curling, um, the saddle fit, discomfort in the back, any of these things. So if you have done all of this, if you've tried all of this up here and nothing, you haven't been able to address any of that, you really, really need to explore pain, discomfort, because this is one of the few things where horses will endure a lot of pain, going forward in the walk, the jog, and the lope for us. But backing, they don't feel confident. They can't see behind them. It seems pointless to them. They're not going anywhere. It doesn't make psychological sense to them. And it's one of the few things they'll start resisting right away on. And if they do, you want to explore this. So, how will I be scored? We want to just talk a little bit about that and scoring and how a judge will score the back. The judges have an entire list of what's called the scoring guidelines, which is on the WDAA website, and it discusses all of the movements and how they will be scored. And judges talk about, and I'm going to glance down some here now because I'm going to read right off the PDF for the scoring guidelines, but if if you're asked to do a back movement and you have a straight balanced halt and it's prompt and smooth, and then you have fluent transitions into a willing back, that the steps are diagonal pairs, that the correct step is count, that the haunch is lowered, the feet don't drag, and the steps look like they're diagonal and even, you will be marked somewhere between an 8 and a 10, and you had a good go. Now, if you're a little bit maybe 7 to 7.5. Like for example, I mentioned, like let's say everything was really good, but you were off a step count by maybe you put in one extra one. You might get from a 7 to a 7.5, or maybe the horse is pretty fluid, everything was okay, it was pretty much round to the bridle, but maybe one of the steps, maybe the first step back wasn't quite as even as all the other steps were about this long, and the first step was only this long, maybe in that 7.5 range, something like that. If you were marked a 6 to a 6.5, you might have been like, okay, pretty almost balanced on the halt, maybe not quite square, but not bad. Diagonal pairs stepping backwards, but possibly a little tiny bit of crookedness. Maybe you caught it, but there was a little bit noticeable. Maybe you started and you weren't too parallel to the rail, so you were straight, but you weren't parallel to the rail. Momentarily, the horse is a little bit like mouth open for a second, or only for a second it was behind the vertical, and then you softened your hand, but you got out of it. So kind of 6.5. Things that will get you a mark of 5.5 to 4.5. Possibly you have some resistance a little bit. The horse is kind of like standing there and you can see the rider's asking it to back up and it's not backing yet. It's not responding to the aid promptly. It goes a little bit hollow in the top line. It does back, but it gets above the bit. It does the back, but it's above the bit. That's a 5. Dragging some of the feet. It does back. It halts, but then it drags its feet front and back. 5. It's consistently behind the vertical. That's between a 4.5 and a 5.5. The pole begins to drop. You're there. When you get down to 4, 3, 2, 1, and we get there sometimes. We do. We get there. And it's too bad, and we don't want to give those marks, but sometimes it happens. And it's going to be things like incredibly crooked. Like the horse really, really wouldn't go. Very kind of disobedient or resistant. It was completely thoracic down, completely behind the vertical. How about running? Have you ever seen horses that were backing because they had been disciplined too many times with the back? Then you'll see horses that when you go to back them, they run backwards. It's crazy. They're running backwards. How about a horse that starts backwards and then the rider can't get it to stop? It's sort of out of control running backwards. So these are the horses that are going to be marked 4, 3, 2. Unfortunately, low scores. Once in a while it happens. Usually online we don't see that, but you will see it in a live show because online, they'll try to retape their test. And that's a good thing to do if you can. So it's going to kind of go like that with the scoring. But if you have a square halt, most of the halts that you looked at and the halts and the rainbacks today were marked anywhere from a 7 to an 8.5 on the ones that we showed you. So it kind of gives you a range of kind of what it looked like and kind of what they would get. So here again is the one that we saw in just to remind us of, this particular horse has more joint articulation than almost any horse stepping back. And that's why I picked it, because she really picks her feet up. It's almost like there are poles there. And that's an amazing quality of the steps. So, personally, I mark this horse very high. I mark this horse 8.5 or 9 because she's absolutely on the bit. The steps are huge, and the joint articulation biomechanically is amazing. Nice back. And if someone gave that back a 9 or a 10, if a colleague did, I'd be like, yeah, thinking about it, it certainly does look like it deserves it. So here's some more backing just so that you can see different types of horses. So this horse just does not have that much bend, but a square halt on the bit and light steps. She does clear the ground and does back up and then step forward. And the steps are clear. So it shows you the difference between a horse with huge articulation. You can run it again if you want to, Dana, it's okay. But she clears the ground. It's definitely back. She's definitely on the bit. And if a judge looked at this horse and went, well, this looks correct, and they gave this horse an 8, and they were in the same class with the horse that we just saw, and a judge saw that horse and decided, well, wow, I gave this one an 8, and then that one, it was on the bit, it backed up, it definitely would deserve an 8 for sure. But if a judge decided, wow, that joint articulation really impressed me, and marked that horse an 8.5, a 9, or a 10, if I was educating that judge, I would have no conversation at all. I would say, good for you, because you recognize that mechanically that horse is doing a great job and stepped back with very clear steps. So we're at the end of this presentation, but we have a guest with us tonight, another judge, and our judge is Janice Mumford. She is a large R judge for Western Dressage and a dear friend, a great educator. And we've asked Janice to join us and talk a little bit about backing with us for a few minutes to give you a little bit extra feedback from another judge. So, hi there. How are you, Janice?
Hello, just fine. Um, One more thing on Joanne's rainback. When I
Yes,
look at a rainback like that, I go, what more do I want? And if I can't answer that question, it's got to be a 9 or a 10.
good.
What more do I want?
And
It's
that,
got articulation, it's diagonal, it's big steps. As a judge, one should ask themselves, just not 7.5 everything. What
yes.
more do I want? So that was on Joanne. On cross training, I'd like to go back to my old in the dark ages quarter horse trail days. Okay.
Yes, yes.
And
Very
I'd like
helpful.
yes, to have two poles on the ground where people can work on the straightness and the RB, and also not rush the steps, but be very methodical on the steps. Because most people, when they start, they just want to fly backwards, and that's not going to be your friend in the long run. So I really like going back to my trail days, because that's cross training and it actually makes it kind of fun for you and the horse too.
But your
Um,
your point, if I can interject, is
yes,
that while you're two things, put two poles parallel and practice your horse backing some there to help with straightness. That's a wonderful point. And
yes,
that at any moment in backing, and especially while you're practicing in hand, but also under saddle, you should have the capability of being able to stop at any moment, and you should train the horse like maybe back 3 steps and halt, and then
Correct.
wait and then try again or step forward and go back. So your point being that at any moment you need to be able to stop, and if you can't stop, you need to practice stopping.
Correct. And as we know in dressage, we want to have control over every step.
Yes.
If it's going forward, backwards, it's really about the control over every step. So the tempo, and everything remains the same. And like you said earlier on the rein back, and I had a competitor come up to me, but I did this many steps. And I said, okay, can you back up a couple steps for me? You do your 4 steps, blah, 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 blah. And guess what? She had 5 because she wasn't counting that last little step the horse did, and one has to be mindful of that. It's every step. And that's to me like if you're practicing, I'm doing 2 steps, I'm doing 1 step, I'm doing 4 steps. One needs to practice that. And it's, so.
That's a good idea. What you're basically saying is be mindful when you practice backing that you have in mind when you start your back how many steps you want to take every single time. I'm going to practice 6 today, or I'm going to practice 3, or I'm going to practice 10. That you
Correct.
and that you had in mind, not just back up willy-nilly.
Correct. Because if you practice the test every time, 6
Yeah.
steps, let's say, or 4 steps, you will not have control over the RB. You just will, you're not thinking about the big picture, like when you get to the swing, which, I think that's a fabulous exercise because people don't realize you're actually loading the haunches,
Yes.
and so I think when the swing is done correctly, it is a beautiful movement to watch. It really is.
It is. And, people think about it at first. When they first read it in a test, they're like, well, that's no problem.
Yeah.
I back and I go forward all the time, and it's not even that many steps. But when you
Mm-hmm.
begin to actually work this, you're like, wow, the skill that it requires from the rider and the balance the rider has to be in the right position. And unfortunately, the rider can adversely affect the horse by their own poor balance and poor aiding. And the horse staying round on the bridle and truly, truly like right there on the aids, it is hard to get it done easily and well. It's a big skill. It's fun.
Mm-hmm. With
It's really fun, but it's a challenge. It's
Yes, so it looks like it's not an effort on either anyone's part because it's the aids. You are such a team where the aids are very imperceptible. So that's the part that makes it fun to me.
Yeah, yes, yes. That's a great observation. Yes. What do you see the most of that goes wrong, do you think, when you're judging? What do you feel like is the number one problem that goes wrong?
Well, like you pointed out, it all starts with the halt. If the horse is like wide, has his right hind, let's say he right hind's wide, because let's say that's to the inside of the arena. You already know the rein back's going to be crooked. You just know it. It's just and that's things people need to think about and be mindful of. Hollowing is a big thing.
Okay, so
Um,
the back goes down and the head goes up.
Yes, yes, but I really, um, to me, when they dump on their shoulders and curl,
Oh, yeah.
that's a hard one to fix because if they're doing that, usually they're also curling in other movements, But
Yeah.
that's like you said, overbidding, hands high, that sort of thing, and or they're being from another discipline where they're being bumped off the bit,
Yes.
you know. So
Then
that's mine.
the cross training
Mm-hmm.
really needs to occur there. Yeah. Yes, that's when cross training really needs to occur.
Yeah, because a lot of times the curling is usually in a curb bit, you know, and
Yes, and
they're
hand and
pulled
hands.
down. Yes, they're pulled down.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yes,
and
yes.
restrained.
And unfortunately, there are some Western divisions that, um, I don't know how to put it, correctly, but they feel that that's good. That's okay. Like they encourage that. They train for it.
Yes.
And the
Yes,
lower
yes.
the horse's head is while it backs up, the better it is. And you're thinking, well, the thoracic is completely drowned. And it's interesting when you look at a horse like that back, and it digs two channels in the dirt as it backs up because the front feet are dragging so badly, that
Hmm.
it's like two railroad tracks that the feet made two tunnels of dirt. And you're thinking, oh,
Hmm.
those aren't steps. That's just dragging backwards. But that is, so people that come from those divisions have to do rework. They have to rework this a little bit, but it is possible. And one of the fastest ways to do that is get off them and totally get off them, and the backing over the poles and keeping, and because you can manually keep their head up, and then you don't, and you can teach them to back verbally. So you back, 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 and you don't pull on their mouth, and keep the head, let the head be up, and then they have to step up over the poles, and so they go, oh, they stop dragging because they,
Hmm. Hmm.
that's, and it takes time and it takes patience, and sometimes people are like, wow, this is fun, it's really cool, I'm having fun training my horse. There are other people though that come and like, wow, I already know this, and my horse already knows this, and they're impatient and they don't want to rework this with a horse, and because they feel like, well, I already know how to do this. Well, yes, you know how to do it this way, but this division requires it that way. So we don't sit there and say that's wrong, that's what you did for that division over there, but over here we require this. So do you want to train this to your horse? You can be a trainer. And
Right, because the division over there was where they rode in a curve. They had a loop in their reins. They
yes,
didn't, and they had a faux headset where we're asking for a more honest connection, because you can't go up the levels unless you have an honest connection back to front. It's not going to happen.
yes, and also we don't allow a downhill balance, which some of those
Mm-mm.
divisions actually have the neck and the poll well below the withers constantly. Um, and we
Mm-hmm.
know that ergonomically, that the horses won't hold up, and we don't want to cause damage, and the exercises that we need, that we're interested in doing, require correct uphill balance or horizontal and above balance. So we're asking for a different balance from them. So that connection that you're talking about is absolutely necessary, and it does require the pole above the withers.
Yes, yes.
So that's tough, but a lot of fun. Thank you very much. Other
Thank
other
you.
observations?
No, because you pretty much covered everything.
Well, it's
And it
really,
was it was very detailed. Thank you.
oh, thank you. And thank you so much for joining in. And we'll look forward to talking to you again soon. And thank you for doing this with us.